deduction, rationality, or whatever. And sometimes they can intermix. Like, for example, for you to make premises, you have to have some induced, like inductive reason. Sometimes, possibly. No, but like, for example, I say all men are mortal. Yeah, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. I still have to have perceived a man, and I have to have known what men are through my five senses. So induction and deduction mix with each other in that way. But intuition is kind of a standalone thing. So it comes by itself. It's like you just know you exist. You just know you. If I were to ask you how would you prove it logically, there would not necessarily be a method which you could use.
So isn't it then a belief then, by definition?
It's first person experience.
That's a form of belief, I think.
You can. The thing is,
Trust in your senses.
look, the way Bertrand Russell talked about it, he wrote a book called The Problems of Philosophy, which is like one of the main basic books that a student of philosophy would learn.
Yeah, he's a logician, right?
Yeah, and what he said was that he defined knowledge, he defined belief as something which corresponds to, which is some information someone has which corresponds to, or either doesn't or does correspond to reality of some sorts. So true belief is that which does correspond to reality, and false belief is that which does not correspond to reality. So the point is, belief and knowledge and belief are not two different things. Almost all knowledge you have is believed in you. You could argue, right?
I agree. I do believe.
So, but the point is how did we achieve the knowledge? That's a more foundational question. So, did you know it? And if you did know it, was it self-evident and so on? So we say, look, things like existence, there's no syllogism for how I can reason my own existence. There's no inductive method I can use to reason not just my own first person subjective experience, but anything first person at all, emotions included. Therefore, these things are unscientific in the sense that science does not have an access to them. So from that perspective, existence cannot be proven scientifically unless one reasons in a circle and says that we're going to check up human brains. But then if you're saying that you're checking up human brains using your first person experience, then you'll be arguing in a circle, because you'll say, how do we know it's the human brain exists as the mind? You'll say we're using the mind to check the brain, and therefore we'll be arguing in a circle. So therefore, first person experiences are first person experiences. Science is in the third person, which means you have to do something to something. Whereas first person experiences, I'm speaking about my own thing. So these are different forms of knowledge, and that's why if you the beginning thing you said, you started off by saying that, well, could you not doubt everything? If we're using induction, abduction, or even deduction, I would agree with you, and I would agree with Fakhruddin al-Razi, who also said the same thing as you, which is that everything is ghalibu dhannin. Everything is a high probability. Like, we don't know anything for sure. However, if we put in the intuitive element, which is what Ibn Taymiyyah said in his contribution, then we have intuitive experiences, first person, which require no rationalization, systematic rationalization there. There's no discursive rationalization. In other words, you don't need to go for an inductive method or an abductive method or a deductive method. They can just reason it. You just kind of no. It would be beyond that. It would just be something you feel.
How much can you trust feelings, though?
Yeah, so that's a question that it goes back to you. Yeah. So that's what Nietzsche like. Nietzsche was saying, I think, therefore I am, is problematic, because how do you know it's you that's thinking? So that's why probably the most concrete statement of fact you can make ever is that there is no doubt that there is existence. Now, how do we know that there is existence? Through feeling that. Now, if we don't have that intuitive knowledge, we wouldn't know existence existed. Now, obviously, it's corroborated by inductive methods, but it's not standard. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So, what we say as Muslims is that you're born with the belief that you exist, but also the belief in God. One God created, whatever, all those things. So you don't need, you don't need rationality in order to come to the conclusion of God. That's basically our premise.
You have the fitra.
Yeah. Because you're born with it, and you're not born believing in Jesus Christ. as God, or the Trinity, or Guru Nanak as the Guru, or even Prophet Muhammad, frankly, as a prophet. But you're born with just this intrinsic kind of submission to a higher being. That's how we kind of conceive it.
Isn't the only alternative to believing that God created reality is that I created reality? Isn't that the only alternative?
There's many alternatives like that. Like I said before, I is a presupposition.
Yeah.
So that's what Nietzsche said. I is a presupposition. It's a possessive presupposition. But the thing is about creation now is a question of, we haven't even reached that point yet, because creation requires more like rationalization, cause and effect, dependency, all those arguments that are made. But we're just still at the base rate of existence. Like, how do I know I'm here? I know because I feel it. That's actually a great answer. I feel that God exists is a legit expression of knowledge.
Mohammed, I wanted to talk to you about Extinction Rebellion because I was here back in, I think, March or something.
Yes.
I was talking to you about it.
But can I just finish with him and then?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, so the instinct or intuition, you're saying this is more trustworthy than sense data and...
I think it's more foundational, because
What do you mean foundational?
everything else depends on intuition.
Yeah. But why is that not a form of belief, like faith?
Well, look,
you're staking some faith in what you perceive.
if you don't have a premise that we exist, then nothing can be said about anything, right? So what I'm saying is that premise.
We work under the assumption.
Pardon?
We're working under that assumption.
Yeah. So because of that, what I'm saying is that because you're working under that assumption that we exist, and that's an intuited assumption. It's not. You don't put that under a microscope. You don't put that into a chart. You don't deduce that. You feel that. You literally experience that. So because of that, it's the most foundational thing. Everything else depends on it. In fact.
There's also how you define it as well, right? Because obviously there's some cultures define existence in a different way. So their intuition would say, yeah, we exist, but in a different format to the way that maybe we describe our existence, right? You have Atheists and stuff like this. They have that intuition, but their concept of existence is completely different.
Well, there is something.
Something.
There is something. I don't think you can get more foundational than that. So nothing. Only nothing doesn't exist. There is an absence of nothingness. Do you see the point? There is an absence of nothingness. If we don't start with the assumption that there's an absence of nothingness, then we can't go anywhere. And now the question is, why is there something rather than nothing? And that's a very, like, if you don't answer that, if you don't ask that question to yourself in this life, it's like you haven't asked yourself anything.
I agree.
It's like, why is there something rather than nothing? Why is it not just? Why is there not a continuation of nothingness?
And to exist in a state of agnosticism on that topic,
It's impossible. Because even having agnosticism, saying I don't know, is saying I. By the way,
this is your topic.
I'll just hear out.
saying
I'll listen in the beginning.
agnostics will say I don't know.
But why is it right?
Agnostics say I don't know.
Being
So,
in a state of
but when you say I don't know, you're making a statement of knowledge.
but this is skepticism.
Yeah, you're saying I don't know. How do you know you don't know?
Yeah.
How do you know you don't know? It's a statement. Yeah, right.
Think about it this way. You
Yeah,
think
you
that you think that you know something.
I like this
You
one.
might think that you don't know something, but you think so. You're not absolutely sure that you don't know something. As I usually say, the full certainty is not comparable
we just had that discussion.
to the wise man's doubt.
But okay, doubt. When you say doubt, how do you define doubt?
Doubt is not being absolutely and utterly 100%
Sure, right?
something.
But you're somewhat sure.
Well, yeah, of course.
All right, so you know
I have my
something.
senses, I have my approximation, but I understand that my senses are flawed, and
Yeah.
thus I can't
So you're on the same path as I am. So I'm saying that the foundation. What I was saying to him is that foundationally, we have to say that there is something rather than nothing, and there's no room for agnosticism on this.
That's the assumption that I follow, even though I'm not sure of it.
And by the way, agnosticism proves this premise. So if someone says, look, brother, I forgot your name. Ramsey. Yeah. Do you know the question that you asked about can there be agnosticism on the first premise of there is.
But if you're in that state, why is that possible?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that the first thing we said, the most foundational thing we can have in terms of a knowledge premise that I can possibly think of, I said there's no doubt that there's existence. He said, okay, well hold on, existence can be quantified or qualified.
Which way does existence exist?
But what I'm saying here is, what I said to him was, we'll go even deeper than that, yeah? There is no doubt, forget out there's no doubt, there is something, that's my premise.
Okay, fine.
There you have it.
You can assume it.
Yeah, there is something rather than nothing.
Yeah, of course, sure.
Yeah, of course. See, there's no agnosticism on that point.
No, but in which way does that something exist?
That's a different question.
I'll give you an
Yeah,
example.
no, I'm not going to. I'm not going there.
It's very relevant.
Yeah, I'm not going there though.
Mohammed, it's very relevant for this. Let me tell you why. Your reflection in the mirror, it exists. It exists just like you do. However, it's only a reflection. It's not you. It's only an image of you in the mirror. It exists the same way you do, and at the same time, it's a different way of existing, even though it exists in the same plane of existence as you do. You know what I mean?
Yes.
To quantify existence and to qualify existence is where all the uncertainty comes, because something is. Something is.
Yeah. So that's
for
no
sure.
problem. But what something is. That's sure. I like the way you put that. Something is, yeah, rather than nothing is.
Sure.
So we can actually falsify the statement that nothing is.
Well, okay, then we come again to the example of the mirror image. The mirror image exists, but it's not you. It's
Yeah,
not
no, but
thinking
what's your name again, bro? Sorry?
Pavlov.
Pavlov. All right. So basically, what I was saying was that look. So there are some things we can falsify.
Of course, always.
Right, no, but,
always falsify.
no, like because you were saying that there's something. Like, this was the discussion before you came along. The discussion before you came along is how do you know something is 100%? Is not everything susceptible to some kind of casting of aspersion? And we said that yes, but there's one thing which you cannot cast any philosophical aspersion of, and if you do, you'd be shooting yourself in the foot, which is this premise that something is.
Something is, sure.
Right? Because if you say I'm agnostic to the fact that something is, your agnosticism is evidence that something is, which is your agnosticism. Right. But you see the point here? So it's that.
I don't think you're working at the agnosticism.
Yeah. So if we start with something is, that premise that something is something which is so foundational that it's almost unfalsifiable. In fact, the opposite of it, which is nothing, is totally falsifiable.
Which is why a lot of the skeptics can't talk at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. Exactly. So here, that's the thing. If we say something is, now the question would be why, or how, or what.
The nature of it.
Yeah.
But those are very, very.
Or who even? Yeah. You see, and that's when we come to the conclusion that okay, we can't really come to conclusions right away, but we can ask the question, and this is what I believe is the first question we should be all asking. If we can falsify that nothing does not exist, or nothing is not a correct statement in its entire sense of the word, then the question is, why is there something rather than nothing?
Well, that's my question.
Because without something, nothing doesn't exist.
Say again?
Without something, nothingness doesn't exist.
No,
Say that again?
why though?
Yeah, why?
Okay. I usually give this example. Imagine a blank piece of paper, and you make a drawing.
That's the wrong example, man. Because I know what you were saying, but he's just saying the question is why is there something then nothing? It's not talking about the idea of nothing can't be possible without lining it with
Why is
something
there
else.
something?
Assuming there is something.
Yeah.
Why is there something rather than nothing?
The purpose of existence.
Maybe I
like
misunderstood.
that. Yeah.
So what do you think the challenge is with not maybe ignoring the question or not treating it with the same?
No. Here's what I think. That look. Why is there something rather than nothing?
Why is it so important?
Yeah, that's because that's the foundational thing. If you didn't have the premise that there's something is, then we couldn't have any conversation. We wouldn't have any cognition. We would have no rationalization. There would be nothing to talk about, in a sense. The existence couldn't be justified.
Asking the question why it exists.
Why?
Why is that important?
Why is there something rather than nothing?
No, why does anything exist?
Why does anything exist is another way of putting it. Well, it's an important question because it's the foundation for everything we're doing in our lives.
But if you have a belief that you can't know that, for example, what's wrong with that?
Look, importance is subjective, right? You can say it's not important. You can say I don't care about that question.
Well,
I can say it is important.
Existentialists will say that it's a secondary thing. It's not.
I see your point, but what I'm saying is that it's all like subjective. In a sense, you can make a point that it's not important. But this is where it becomes a bit of a theological discussion, or let's say philosophical